Okay, welcome and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Rivulous Irrigation Training Series. I'm your host, Richard Rastuccia, and today we're going to be talking about water treatment and micro irrigation. And this is especially applicable to ag irrigation, be due to sometimes the dirty water situation we're dealing with there, right? We are pulling water from a lot of different places that is exposed to a lot of different environmental conditions. And as a result, it does impact your micro irrigation system. But the good news is the impact can be almost always fixed or lessened. And we have with us today Corey Broad from Avid Water, who is going to explain to us how to deal with water treatment in micro irrigation. Now, you all know Corey. He's done a great job on these trainings for the past 3 years. He's now the agronomic sales manager for Avid Water. And I'll tell you, in doing these programs and working with Corey for, 7, 8 years is what we've worked together. One thing's for sure, Corey has a full 360 view of what's happening in agriculture. He's not just focused on irrigation, even though that's mostly what he does, but he's got this complete agronomic view. One of the few people I know in the irrigation industry that has such in-depth knowledge about agronomics too. One thing's for sure is his customers get the full benefit of this when they're doing business with Corey. And most of all, Corey really cares about his customer success. I've seen this firsthand, and every one of your customers is lucky to have you. Corey, thanks for joining us today.
No, I appreciate it, Richard, and the kind introduction. And it's been first time being introduced right on the webinar series now at Avid Water, but it's really exciting to be here and be part of such a big company and an important player in the industry, and also a company that's so diverse and not just handling micro irrigation design and installation, but now into the management side of things. And then water treatment is a huge part of our business here as well. And we'll talk about today kind of our focus at Avid Water as far as what we do with water treatment, where we're going, and really the benefits that growers can see in not only doing this type of treatment on their system, but hopefully doing it with us, and the net benefit that they can see, and then hopefully those stackable successes that you just referred to. So very excited to be here. It's an important topic. I think when you and I talked even earlier this morning, I was in the field working on a system with a customer for some remediation. So fortunately, all the mud is on my pants and not on my shirt, but eat, sleep, and breathe it every day for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting, Corey, and I wonder what you think about this. I think oftentimes water treatment and micro irrigation gets the least amount of attention. It gets passed by, yet I really think most everybody needs it.
I would agree. I think that this year has been really interesting for our customers here in the Central Valley, because for the first time in a long time, we have water and a lot of it. And you talked about water coming from different places, and growers have been, having to utilize groundwater in certain cases for the last 2 to 3 years. And this year, maybe they're not using any of those groundwater inputs, but now they have something from a canal or from a reservoir or from some very distant source, and the constituents that are present in those bodies of water are very different, most likely. And so just because you've been doing it doesn't mean that maybe you're using the right thing going forward. So evaluating that program, getting water tests, really dialing in the process in the products is going to be important. And then there are many customers also that just don't do it, and they don't see an issue until they have a big issue, right? Yeah. It's one here, one there, okay, but then all of a sudden, oh wow, it is those 105-degree days. That's when your system always seems to plug. It doesn't plug in March, of course, and now it's kind of a 911. And so I think it does get missed. I would also say that, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the presentation, unfortunately, it's generally not the irrigation companies that are handling this type of chemistry or this type of service. It's being done by third parties, which my view on the methodology of what we bring to it at Avid Water is we have designed, installed, walked through, maybe even managed your irrigation system with you. So who better to service it and put the right products in than the people who built it, kind of own it with you. And I think that's where the biggest value comes in. And again, those kind of stackable successes.
Well, I think you're right, because the other thing that certainly eliminates in my mind is any finger pointing later.
100%.
I know who's responsible for the design, installation, and now the maintenance too. And I'm getting with Avid, I'm getting a very high quality company with a lot of knowledge and information and experience. So yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
And that's a great segue to kind of jump into the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about. And obviously, Avid Water is a little bit of a new name in the industry, but it really comes from two really key legacies for Central California, micro irrigation especially, but just general irrigation. Avid Water was officially formed and announced in May of this year, but the legacy is much longer than that. Agri Valley Irrigation was formed in 1983 and has 6 retail locations, or had 6 retail locations, and is definitely a leader in the business. And Irrigation Design and Construction, also known as IDC, was founded in 2004 and grew very rapidly to a total of 9 retail locations, and focused on the Central Valley, but also Northern California and the coastal markets. And so this combination of AVI plus IDC is where we get Avid and rolled in the Avid Water name. And today we have 15 retail locations. We're working on our 16th currently. We have elite construction teams, and really dialing in this ability to have people in the right places means that we can take care of projects, right? So people in places mean we can handle projects. And it doesn't matter if those projects are big or small, we really can help you push your water further. And as we're going to talk about today, not just installing pipe like you can see in the picture here on a large scale pistachio ranch, maybe in western Fresno County, but can help you dial in 28 acres of lettuce in the Central Coast and what we need to do there, and not just put it in, but also again have that kind of full ownership, that full circle with the grower, saying, hey, we're going to design this, we could manage it for you, but also we can make sure that it's performing well by doing water treatment. And I think one thing that's important to market for our business is this kind of mixed group of people that we have and skill sets, where again, we have certified crop advisors, pest control advisors, qualified applicators, CIDs for designers, irrigation specialists, bunch of different licensees, people with engineering backgrounds, PhDs. It's really cool to be a part of this kind of ecosystem in our business that has a skill set where really we can handle what comes our way no matter what.
Yeah, the other thing I think when I think of you guys is used to work for a contractor, irrigation contractor, and we could do jobs that others couldn't, just simply because we had the right equipment too. If you have the right equipment, then you can have these big opportunities. I think that's something you have as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think our ability to invest in the capital necessary to get the pieces of equipment that we need. So maybe I'll edit my phrase earlier. It's people, places, and pickups. Trying to stay with the P theme, but I mean the reality is we have a lot of experience in the construction side of our business, but with that comes the ability to buy the right pieces of equipment. I mean, you can see this trencher here. We really invested in a number of different areas where met with growers a couple of weeks ago that were like, oh, you can do that? And we're like, absolutely. And they're like, I didn't know you could do that. And there's a lot of things that we can do. We have the imagination, we have the experience, and then again, we have those equipment to where, again, we can handle a 12-acre project to a 1,200-acre project with no worries.
Yeah, and that's really unique to have that experience and the tools to do it.
Yeah, 100%. So people wanted to talk obviously about water treatment today, so I'll kind of pivot into that. And I think we talked about the history of Agri Valley and IDC traditionally, but each of those businesses had their own water treatment business also. So even though that the construction businesses and the retail side have this long tenure, but so does water treatment for these businesses. So Agri Valley had a business known as MicroPro. It still is currently MicroPro today for the customers that are used to it. And IDC's water treatment business is known as BioDrip, still the same, but really kind of merged under the Avid Water umbrella and meshed with the tenured employees that were doing operations and management, but also with some new faces like myself that are involved to help, the business grow and look for new opportunities to kind of synergize with the customers. And that customer base itself is over 500 customers. We really have a service reach that goes from Kern County all the way up to San Joaquin County across the Central Valley. So really, again, no field is too small or too big to receive this kind of treatment and service that we bring. And when I think about the crops that we see, I mean, there's definitely more than what's on this list, but the things that come to my mind on just the sites that I've visited, almonds, pistachios, grapes, tomatoes, cotton, corn, walnuts, onions, garlic, lettuce. Really, think about the 35 to 40, large scale commercial commodities that are grown in the Central Valley. We're able to kind of touch each of those.
Yeah, that's really a large geography too. I mean, it is really the entire heart of agriculture in California.
Absolutely. And that's where I think a majority of the challenges are also with the water quality, because we do have groundwater mixed with surface water when it is available. You have kind of these, large scale agriculture can make things more difficult at times. So the ability to kind of, I'll say, babysit it becomes more difficult. So having some type of program in place to mitigate issues, just because maybe one guy's covering, a few thousand acres, I can't look at every emitter every day. So let's make sure that I have some mitigation in place to make sure that I don't have a problem, or I don't have a large problem when it's 105 degrees, like we referred to earlier.
Right. Interesting.
And so when I think about what we're doing, kind of how we're doing it, really the customers are trained, I'll say at this point, because of these longstanding businesses that have been here, but really they expect a level of service and expertise that's unmatched in our industry. Our staff is visiting and inspecting these installation and injection sites multiple times per month. And the big difference in my mind is we're not only looking at these maintenance units, which are, the injection pumps and tanks and pieces that really matter for the water treatment side of things and the chemical operation, but they're also looking at your irrigation system. We have a trained staff of professionals that understand all of the parts that our chemistry is protecting. And I think that's the unique difference where, again, somebody like myself and many others, I could tell you every single part on this filter station.
Yeah.
And not only could I tell you what it is, we probably have them in stock at those 15 retail locations we were talking about. So now there's an opportunity where if Richard, you're the customer in this example, hey, Richard, I noticed that last time I was out at your site, we talked about that air vent that I'm standing next to being broken or leaking, or that butterfly valve, or name any of those parts. Hey, I'm going to be going back out there on Friday of this week for my regular inspection and service. Do you want me to bring one of those out? And the answer is usually absolutely. Then the other time is too, hey, you know what? It's simple. I'm already there. I'll just put that new air vent on for you. That's just one less thing that you have to have a headache. And again, that's a very small example, but think of the opportunities as a customer to be able to almost say, hey, I know that my schedule for inspection and service are on these days. Hey, can you bring couplers out for, my team, because we're going through and we're repairing stuff, or we're flushing, or I know harvest is. I mean, I think of, again, using that imagination, we have those opportunities to really help that grower save time and money.
Yeah, it's amazing, Corey. That's real partnership, if you ask me. What you just described is what we all want from our suppliers, and it's really great to see that you're doing that. So we have a question coming in, and this person's asking about the customer sites multiple times per month. What dictates that? Is it the size of the system? How do I know if somebody's going to come out one time, 4 times? What regulates that?
Yeah, I think that it's all about setting the expectation up front with the customer. I think that if you have a site or a previous experience that says, hey, this thing needs to be, I'll say, handled differently than others, there's a discussion to be had there. But I would say that it's standard for us to visit sites more than once a month. I think that that's bore out of experience and knowing that especially as we get into June and we get into July, the systems are running more frequently. So generally the chemical use is going to be higher at that point. Also, I would say that the more miles you're putting on your system, the more water you're running through it, the more likely things are going to happen. And so from our service level and ability to stay on top of things and provide this, valuable service that I'm telling you we're doing, I feel like we need to be there more frequently. And I would also say that, there are customers that also say, hey, I'm okay with you coming once a month. I think that it's all about meeting and exceeding that customer expectation.
Right. And so, Corey, if we're in June now, and if somebody was making a visit out to my farm and saying, I'm going to do this check, is it a wet check? Is it a flushing? What is involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, best case scenario, the system is running. And again, I would say this time of year, maybe in another week or so, as the temperatures continue to climb, the odds become a lot higher than say April 10th, right? For that system to be on. But it is nice when the system is running, and we're going to go through and we're going to verify pressures. We're going to verify what I just kind of call the pulse of the system, right? If you go to the doctor, it could be for the most basic thing. They're going to take your pulse. They're going to take your blood pressure. It's a lot of the same things for us kind of doing this visual inspection of the field. We're going to write down flow meter readings for you. Make sure that you're on track for the chemical that you've used. So if you use 10 gallon, I'm picking a fictitious example, but if you've used 10 gallons of chemical across 100 acre feet, right, based on what the flow meter says, is that still correct for the prescription and things like that? And so it's really just about, again, staying on top of those things. And I would say that, when you look at the pressure of the system, and if every time you go out there, it's 38 PSI and it's, this flow rate, and things have not changed, you feel comfortable as a service provider and hopefully as a grower. If I notice something on a service report where I go, Richard, the pressure's up a little bit and your flow's down by 50 gallons a minute, maybe you haven't seen it yet in the field, or the guys just haven't found where it's happening, but we need to look at something that may hopefully set into motion a flushing protocol, right? Where you can say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to have my guys go out and perform some infield service. Or, hey, Corey, can you do it? Because I don't have time or I don't have the manpower. It's just those opportunities to be able to look ahead of it. No different than kind of really just paying attention to what's going on. I hate to oversimplify it, but at the end of the day, it's just that extra set of eyes to say, hey, Richard, we're on top of it. I know you have a million other things, but we're here.
Yeah, well, I love the analogy of blood pressure and pulse, right? It's pretty basic, blocking and tackling, or ground balls and fly balls. But we know what the norm is, and if it's off, you've got a big problem.
Yeah, or hopefully it's a small problem, and then we can address it ahead of time. And maybe even conversely, the other way is, hey, your pressure is down and your flow is up.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you have a leak somewhere, or somebody left a valve on, or they're not running the system the way you think it is. We actually went out and did some irrigation consulting work on a field recently, and as recently as 2 weeks ago, and we were talking to the owner, and he's like, oh yeah, we have water in the north right now. We went over there and the water wasn't there. Yeah. And we're talking to him and he goes, let me call the irrigator, get a phone call back. And they weren't running the system in 2 sets, they were running it in 3. And the grower was not even made aware of this. Yeah. And so, there's things, right, that can play into, why is the system behaving the way it is? And so we just want to make sure we can help catch those. Yeah,
pretty interesting.
So obviously, I talked about the places, but talking about the people, I think this is super important. As again, a large scale responsible business, an industry leader, we want to make sure we partner with the right people. And so we have long-term suppliers and manufacturers in the industry. We're buying our chemistry. We are not mixing this in the backyard or just kind of figuring out on a whim. We are working with licensed, certified people that we're getting the right analysis from appropriate labs. We're getting the right products recommended. And we have not only our team of experts, which I'll get into in a moment, but a team of industry supplier experts behind us. And I think that also is something that needs to be noted. We're trying to provide the best service and product to solve the issue. So we can control the service, but we can also control the product, even though we're not making it, because we're choosing who we're partnering with. And talking about our team internally, we have experts with years of on-site treatment and certification and education background that, you talked about the agronomy, engineering, chemistry. Colin Scholl is a certified ag irrigation specialist, and he's our agronomic sales lead for water treatment. And so he's a little bit of, I'll say, the go-to guy for all of us on some of the complex backgrounds, just given his degree, and also his basically entire professional career has been in water treatment, from food plant production all the way down to large-scale farming. And so it's a natural fit for him. We have Blair Baker up in Northern California. She's a certified crop advisor, and she's one of our account managers working with growers. And she's unique in that her background is in water management and scheduling, but also irrigation construction, and then is also involved in the water treatment side of our business. So she's very well rounded and capable of, again, being able to diagnose why are there changes in the system, what product should we use, how is it going to interact. Tim Tovar is our operations manager, kind of helping us integrate these businesses together for MicroPro and BioDrip, and somebody who I was in the field with him this morning. He is on site, boots on the ground, has a ton of experience from remediation treatments to continuous. And then Joe Raggio is also a certified ag irrigation specialist, and he's our sales and operations leader in Northern California. I've known Joe for the 10 years that I've been in this business, and he's been in it longer than I have, and again has an excellent background in irrigation design and installation, plus years of experience kind of working with these chemistries. So these are just a few of the faces that are involved in what we do every day, but certainly are leaders and help us set ourselves apart.
Wow, that's a ton of experience right there, and pretty amazing credentials.
Absolutely. So this slide, I think, goes without saying, but it's pretty straightforward. When we talk about distribution uniformity, that's obviously going to be, I'll say, the selling point or the topic of discussion for number one, why you should probably invest in micro irrigation, but also why you should invest in keeping it clean or keeping it well maintained. I think most designers, if they put a DU on their system, there's probably a 9.2 to a 9.4 somewhere in there. Obviously, a DU of 1 is not possible. But essentially, distribution uniformity is a efficiency factor. It's a divider of how evenly water, fertilizer in most cases, is being applied to your crop. And obviously, there's a direct impact on crop productivity. A leading cause of low DU is due to plugging of emission devices. You can see the picture on the right-hand side. I took this picture 2 years ago. I remember very specifically. This was probably, I'll say, end of July, beginning of August, pre-harvest in almonds. It was probably 104 degrees out every single day. And these trees were starved with water, and we had to go out and perform a remediation treatment and a number of different things. This is before I had even left my previous role, and was just here to kind of help out on some ideas of things we could do. But this doesn't even look like it's necessarily that dirty to the naked eye, but somebody who knows emitters pretty well, these things were solid as far as plugging goes. And so I look at the number of DU tests that we do, and look at the number of systems that are probably operating with I'll say a subpar, substandard DU. Really, it's just going to lead to over applied water or under irrigated crops. You basically have two ways of looking at that equation. So that's the reason why we do what we do in its most raw form, and something that we help mitigate. So when I think about the steps for water treatment, and again, this is meant to be a very kind of high level overview of what we're doing at Avid Water. But I'd say always start with a water sample before applying treatment products or services to your field or irrigation system. It's, again, we just talked about going to the doctor. If you just go in and you go, I don't feel good, and they go, well, amoxicillin is the choice for you. It could be right. I would say I'm no doctor, but the odds are probably pretty low that that's what's ailing you, or at least that's what will fix what is ailing you. So you should understand the chemistry of the water, understand the constituents that are present, because that's going to help us select the right product and service schedule to really fix your issue or solve any potential issues. Goes without saying, but work with a licensed and experienced professional to ensure the products are right fit for your system, your crop, your soil, your water dynamics. Please follow all local, state, and federal guidelines and regulations. Again, I think that goes without saying, but that's, again, how we operate as a business, as a licensed business. We sit down and we say, hey, we're following all the rules and regs. We're taking that off your plate as well, right, Richard? As an owner operator, we're able to sit down and say, hey, let us handle this because we understand the paperwork, the hazards, the safety, all the things that go into it. And we can make sure that not only, is your system safe, your people are safe, but again, it's done by the book. And then again, consider your long-term implications of what products you're using, especially if they're less expensive. If you're putting down something that's negatively affecting soil structure, profile, salt accumulate, I mean, there's so many different things that could be quote cheaper, but using it once is probably fine. Using it regularly long-term for a 25-year almond orchard that you're going to have to plant into something else might be something to consider. And then again, inspect those emission devices to verify the type of plugging occurring and really where's this happening? What's the critical point in your irrigation system? Because sometimes if the plugging is, I'll say, sediment, which we'll get into, it's going to be hard to deal with. If it's completely plugged in the emitter and there's no way to even get chemistry into it to clean it out, kind of again defeats the purpose potentially. And then of course, be sure to flush your irrigation system with the proper velocity and pressure to kind of get those constituents out. And we'll go through some of that in more detail.
So Corey, I'm looking at this treatment word, right? So does everybody use the same treatment for each issue, or are the treatments proprietary?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of common products, and we'll talk about some of them today. There's a lot of products that are used by many different people. I'll start with that. I think that it comes down to selecting the right product for the issue. So that's number one. So that's why you have to have that water test to know, is this sediment, is it biological? What type of biological? Is pH a factor? A number of different things, right? So say that there's, I'll pick a number, but there's 10 products to choose from. 9 of them may or may not be right. It just depends. Maybe it's just one of them on a host of those things. But again, I think as a licensed professional and somebody who has the customer's best interest in mind, it's my job to sit down and say, okay, will this solve your problem? The answer needs to definitely be yes. Then I have to go down the list of what are the cons, if any. And also, I understand that maybe commodity prices aren't where they are, you want them to be, right? Or the profitability isn't there on the farm. I have to be able to look out for your best interest in mind and go, hey, Richard, this is the right product for your solution right now. Maybe it isn't long term, or maybe it is, but just know that you're going to pay for it. That conversation is really sensitive, but it needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. Now we've got another question coming in here, and it's referring back to your last slide, but it says, would a flushing program mitigate the plugging issue shown in the slide?
So my short answer with my experience as a micro irrigation salesperson, absolutely. Please flush every day. I think it would be very similar to saying, does changing your oil regularly help extend the life of your engine? My general mechanical knowledge would say yes. Does it mean that your engine will never need to be fixed or overhauled? No. So, that last example was probably mostly due to a lack of maintenance on the front end, which led to a whole lot of maintenance and chemistry on the back end. And so I would say that regular and proper flushing will always help. Regular and proper brushing of your teeth will help, but you may or may not get a cavity too. So
yeah, good.
That's my parallel to that one. Sometimes chemistry is just necessary. It just has to be that way. But that, again, needs to be defined by a water sample, a water test, And again, somebody who has the experience and background to say, Richard, I'm not just selling you chemistry just so, we're throwing an extra blanket on in case it gets cold. No, I'm doing this because of this constituent in your water, because of this risk.
Yeah.
I think that's where that conversation has to come from.
Yeah, and I love all the medical analogies. I get this really easily that way. So the other thing I'm wondering, or this viewer is wondering, is that would there be early indicators that were ignored maybe in that situation before it got that bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think that very rarely do we see flare-ups. Very rarely does just the entire system get plugged. That's usually some type of catastrophic event where a main line breaks or a well collapse. That's a very specific issue and very rare. I would say that, again, it goes back to maybe being able to monitor things. So, if you have really good field staff and they're watching the system like a hawk and they're walking the fields, they're not just looking for leaks and putting in couplers, but they're going, hey, Richard, I found like 5 drippers that are plugged. You go, well, it's 100 acres. There's 5,000 drippers. Okay.
Yeah.
But then next week he goes, hey, I found 10. And then he goes, hey, I found 20. And then, but if you don't do anything, then that's probably on you. I think going back and looking at the flow meter, going back and looking at the pressure. Hey, Richard, your flow's dropping. Okay. Well, if the field flow is supposed to be 1,000 gallons a minute, it's flowing 998. I think we're okay. If it's flowing 990, we're probably still fine. But all of a sudden, when it's 900, well, that's 10%. And then now we're going down maybe a little bit of a spiral. So I think there are always early indicators. It's just how maybe intense you're looking for them. Obviously, shameless plug, technology helps you do that. You could look at your flow meter from your phone by getting technology from us to where you could just log on live and go, wow, and also look at it historically and know right where it is, also getting pressure and all those other things. So yeah, the indicators are there. Sometimes simple investments in some of these other technologies can help leverage protection for your system.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned the technologies there. I mean, this is making our jobs easier and easier every day.
Absolutely. So kind of talking about field plugging, right? I think they generally kind of falls into 3 categories. Inorganic, so sediment plugging caused by debris that's passed through the filtration unit. Hopefully you have a filtration unit. I've seen some fields that don't. But again, think of your sand, silts, clays, even rocks, soil. There's a number of different things, right, that can kind of get in there. It's for lack of better words, dirt, right? Mm-hmm. That happens. It probably is more common from surface water applications, but it's there. Organic is going to be your kind of living material that's passed through the unit. It generally is sometimes even microscopic in nature, excuse me. But that growth or accumulation has occurred maybe even later. So it wasn't like if you open up an emitter and you see this big kind of nasty thing growing on it, well, it probably just didn't make its way through the filter. It was probably microbes that kind of formed together, right, and kind of turned into what it is. And then obviously you have chemical plugging, which is this kind of precipitation of compounds. Maybe it's 2 types of fertilizers that didn't agree, or it's a fertilizer and irrigation water that didn't agree. Pesticides, a number of different things that kind of compound and turn into these kind of rocks, sludges, different things. I've seen them pretty solidified. So those are kind of the 3 things that you see out there. Chemical treatment is probably only really good for, again, maybe potentially this kind of chemical plugging that you see, or organic. It can help with inorganic, but that's a whole nother set of challenges that we'll kind of go into. So I'll start with, on the right-hand side is a flush out from the end of a 330-foot drip line. And I flushed the line for a minute, and that is how much sand I collected in a baggie out of the end of this line. That is from a well water application, just sand. They have a 150 mesh filtration unit in line to help protect it, but that's still what was making its way through. Now, that amount of sand, obviously I compacted in my hand for demonstration, but The reality was is it started with one speck of sand and then was two, and then as you can see, built up. So these inorganic debris are challenging to remove because if it lodges itself into the emission device or the pathway, it's really hard to quote get it out. Probably jammed in there for a reason, but also it's going to be really hard. I can't probably put enough chemical in it to quote melt it down, to break it down, to make it go away. So a lot of the time device replacement becomes necessary. One thing that's important to note is inorganic debris can be compounded with the presence of organics. Organics tend to get sticky, they're living, they're films, they're these microbes that we've talked about. And so they get sticky, they grab a piece of sand or silt or clay that otherwise would have gone by. And now that's gotten stuck. And now the next one comes by, but doesn't go, it sticks as well. And then you end up with this kind of compounding effect. Proper flushing is always the best method to attempt remediation on inorganic debris. Hopefully it's stuck on maybe the outside of the emitter. So in this case, you look at that, Richard, and you're probably slightly alarmed with how much sand there is. The good news is that sand came out of the end of the line. So that means that it wasn't inside the emission devices. And I wasn't notified of there being plugging. I just flushed the end of the line because that's what I do when I go out to a field. And sure enough, that's what came out. So it was able to say, hey, Mr. Grower, we need to flush the appropriate velocity and timing to get this stuff out.
That's what's amazing to me, is that the system was operating effectively, even with that much sand in it.
Absolutely. And you'd be surprised how robust these systems are. I mean, again, our industry does a good job of making products and hopefully designed well. But the reality is the systems may not show you that that's in there. We talked about these early indicators, right? Maybe it hadn't reared its head yet in this case, but we were able to talk with the grower, build a flushing protocol with them, and they're flushing different parts of this field every single week when they run.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Good photo for the maintenance poster.
Yeah, and so this photo, this is organic buildup, right? This is that sticky stuff I talked about. That isn't peanut butter. That's just bad news spares, for lack of better words. So organic plugging presents a lot of challenges, as you can see. Most of the time it's solvable with chemistry and good practices. This kind of organic biological plugging can compound the sediment that we talked about earlier, but because it's alive, it has an opportunity to be broken down or even killed, for lack of better words, in a more realistic fashion than, say, removing a piece of sand. Kind of common products that are used be copper sulfate, pentahydrate, chlorine, or peroxyacetic acid, also referred to as PAA. These are just common chemicals. I'm not saying that that's the answer for all organic or biological control. These are just the things that we see in the marketplace. We use some of these, and there's pros and cons to each. But if you have really the presence of organic or biological fouling, it's probably more common that it comes from surface water because this water is exposed. It's outside. It has sunlight. It is gone maybe tens to hundreds of miles to get to your ranch. So it's seen a lot of things along the way, birds and fish and all this other stuff. But that doesn't mean that it actually can't come from well water applications. You've seen that before. But after a remediation treatment, high pressure and velocity flushing is always going to be recommended, because even if we've broken down those debris, where in this case, the photo, it's stuck on the face of the emitter, maybe I've broken it off, but now I need to make sure that I get it out, just like that sand that I showed you earlier.
Yeah, interesting.
So flushing, sorry for the lack of contrast in the photo that you can see on the right-hand side, but I think you can kind of see how far that water's shooting across, and that's not chocolate milk. This was a grower who told me that they flush regularly. And their filter was turned off, by the way. During remediation or shock treatment, it's common to have an application of chemical made, and then the irrigation system to be turned off for 24 to 48 hours, at least per recommendation. And that's to allow the chemistry to continue to work, while also not maybe pushing it directly into the soil or even out of the irrigation system. After the system's been treated and sat, you need to again flush to kind of remove those constituents. That means you need a higher than normal velocity. So if your normal velocity in your irrigation system is 1 feet per second in a hose or something like that, that's actually below the minimum of the velocity, flushing velocity. So the book says 1.5 to 2 feet per second. I know that your guys' website, Richard, has an excellent flushing calculator that's online. It has it for general design, but also for flushing specific. So a lot of the times that's done by closing valves or sections of the field to kind of increase that flow and velocity to one side during your flushing protocols. So consider trying to achieve 25 to 30 PSI at your riser when the end of the line is open. That could be measured with the hose gauge. Maybe your irrigation designer, somebody at our company can help you kind of dial in some of those things. But the reality is just going out while the system is running in its normal state and opening up, 10 hoses for a minute, that's probably not what we're recommending or what we're looking for. If it's a one set 40-acre field, maybe it's opening closing a valve, and now it's a 20-acre set. You've doubled the flow to one side of the field, and then maybe opening up half of one end. That's just kind of a rough example. But I think you see what I'm getting at is get that pressure up, get the ability to shoot that water, scour the inside of the tubing, and pull that debris off.
Yeah, so Corey, one thing I wonder, I spent a lot of time getting my soil right, making it as healthy as possible. And then I see something like a shock treatment, and I think, does that shock treatment damage my soil? What do you do about that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, and I think it's an important one. I think that farmers and ag input providers, we're stewards of the land. We've talked about it. We understand the goals of the customers. Our business is focused on not only solving your problem, but doing it economically and ecologically, right? And thinking of the environment. So I talked about chlorine, I think, on one of the other slides. Chlorine is something that I'd say most of us are pretty, I'll say, comfortable with and probably used to, considering it's probably in your tap water. And it's probably been in any pool you've been in. And it just kind of exists. Just putting on a lot of chlorine in your soil affects that ground? I would say the answer is yes. Does it mean that you should never apply chlorine to that field? I would say that never is probably not the right word to use in that case, right? So I think you have to look at what are the customer situations, what are the customer's goals, and then what product is the right fit for you from a cost perspective, from a performance perspective, and also with the environment in mind. So if I say, yeah, Richard, I could do this with chlorine, but it's half the price, but here's the drawbacks to using this product, and then here's the pro is it being maybe more cost effective, or I could use this other product and it's going to be 25% more expensive, but its net result is greater than the impact of chlorine. Again, it's my job to provide you with that information. It's not your job to have all of that on hand and you to be able to say, you know what, based on my circumstances, this is what I'm going to choose.
Yeah, so there's definitely trade-offs, pros and cons.
Absolutely. In any chemistry that we use, really, in any application, right? And so again, for us, it's about having that experience and that background and technical expertise to be able to, show the customer, this is what we want to do and this is why.
Yeah, another excellent point of why you need a professional working at this, somebody who's doing it every day and seeing results and can make the proper recommendations and give you the proper trade-offs.
100%. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about treating your soil. So we just kind of talked about it. I think that irrigation surfactants, they sometimes get labeled as soil surfactants. I think that there's a little bit of nuance there, but the reality is this is something that we've done whole webinars on before, and you've been gracious enough to let us talk about these products. It's something that we're selling direct to consumer at this point. And really promoting 3 chemistries from Precision Laboratories, which is a great market partner for us. Strata is a water and nutrient retention product. It's kind of, for lack of better words, I call it liquid organic matter. It's going to help hold things in the soil. It's almost like having improved soil structure for its lifespan. Tolero is kind of a unique one where it's really helpful in row crops. It's kind of got a little bit of an infiltration, but also a spreading agent in it. And then Quicken is probably our #1 seller, and it helps improve irrigation water infiltration in tight or difficult soils. So you want to increase that biology in your soil. You want to do a number of different things to build that soil structure. Those things take time and unfortunately a lot of money, and they're good things to do. But this could also be something that can help you get through those 105-degree days when you're still trying to build the calcium level in your soil, or change different practices, organic matter, etc. Just something to consider. They're all liquid and injectable into your irrigation system. They're super safe. Average application cost, depending on the product, is $12 to $32 per acre at the website for Precision Lab up here. But if anybody's interested, I'd love to talk to you about it. I have a couple years experience with these products. I use them on fields that I manage with a lot of success.
Yeah, Corey, I've used that Quicken product myself in some clay soils, and I was amazed at the results. It happens pretty quickly, and there was a visible difference.
Absolutely. So if you need to get a hold of me, this is my contact information up here, and always out in the field, as you can see, flushing lines, and it's work that has to be done. But like I said, it's been an interesting year this year with all the surface water that we had. We're very lucky to have it. And with that comes definitely a set of challenges for our growers, but we're here to help, mitigate any problems, but hopefully also solve any that have come up. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Corey, what a tremendous photo. Thank you for coming out and talking to all of us about this often neglected subject that seems to be so important for the success of your system and long-term success. So, boy, we certainly learned a lot today. So thank you, Corey.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. So I also want to thank all the viewers. Thank you for coming out today. We know you guys are busy, especially this time of year. So spending a little bit of your day with us means a lot to us. Remember, you can see any of our over 300 trainings on our website, janesusa.com/trainings. They're all free of charge. Many of them are credits for your IA certifications. And as we get further along in the year, that becomes more important. So easy way to get some free credits there as well. So Corey, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Hey, next week, we're going to be back with Kevin Shortell, and we're going to be talking about how to develop and plan for a successful greenhouse operation. So should be good. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Corey.
Thanks.